Hey gang, this video is going to be about what to look for if you're in the market to buy a motorcycle. It doesn't matter if it's a late model or a vintage. These are a lot of great tips that'll help you if you're looking to put two wheels underneath you. So stay tuned for that. Alright, you're in the market to buy a bike and you want to buy it to keep it. You're not buying it to flip it. You're not buying it because you've got all the tools that's needed to work on it. You're not buying it because you want to go full custom with it. You're buying it because you want to ride it. There's a lot of things that you need to look for beyond those of us that are capable of making all the repairs front to back on a motorcycle. So if you are one of those people, pardon the gloves, it is 36 degrees out. Okay, let's start with the title. Make sure you've got a title. Make sure that that title VIN number matches the VIN number on your headstock. That's where most of your title numbers or most of your information is going to be on most bikes, especially on these vintage bikes. That's where it's going to be. Also, check your engine case numbers. Your engine case numbers in this case are just tucked right down in there. A good thing to have with you is a decent flashlight so you can get a good look wherever it is that you're needing to take a look at. Okay, so we are looking for other things on the title as well. Is the title in the name of the person who is selling it? Oftentimes, people will grab a motorcycle just to turn it around and flip it and not even turn the first bolt on it or even try to start it. Make sure it's in their name. Once you determine it's in their name via asking them for their ID just to verify, then you want to check the mileage. If the mileage is important to you, that the mileage matches coincides with the title, or obviously has more miles on it. I've actually purchased bikes that are showing more miles than what are actually on the bike, and it's showing actual. The reason? Well, the previous owner inverted a couple of numbers. Not a big deal. It still said actual. Planned on putting those miles on anyway. By the time I'm ready to upgrade or sell, it'll have more miles on it than that. But check your mileage. If it says exempt, like I just showed you, question it. How do you question it? You don't necessarily question the person that's selling the bike. You come up and you look at the condition of your gauges. You're not just looking at the condition of your gauges. You want to make sure the patina matches on your gauges, that it doesn't look like they have been swapped out or altered. Okay? Does that make sense? You want to be sure that the colors are the same. You want to be sure they're the same size. You want to be sure they look like they are original to the bike. So what else do you need to do with the title? If you want to know how many owners a particular motorcycle has had, oftentimes there is a title number, a former title number. You can take that vehicle's VIN number, use the VIN, go down to the BMV. Don't be in an all-fired hurry to buy the bike. Put a deposit on it, ask them to hold it for a little while so you can run down and check things out. Find out how many owners the bike's had. If this bike's had 15 or 20 owners, it's probably something you're going to stay away from because so many hands have been mixed up in it. All right, what else? I think I already mentioned, make sure it's titled to them. I also mentioned that the serial number is close to the VIN number, engine serial number. It's often going to be a little bit off. All right, so that's enough of the title situation. Next thing you want to look at is you want to look for any major cosmetic flaws. If you don't see any major cosmetic flaws or quote unquote customizations, then you have a bunch of things that you need to check. You need to check the front brake, make sure that you have a good firm handle, that you have ample fluid in the reservoir, that your front wheel will spin free, and when you apply the brake it stops, and then when you release it that it will roll free again. If not, that's a master cylinder rebuild that's going to cost you money. If the front wheel is locked up, which happens a lot on these older bikes, you want to make sure that you mention that to the current owner, that you've got repairs to make there. That'll help you get your price down. You want to look at the electrical wiring, the lights, the switches, everything. You want to make sure that everything works, okay? If the bike doesn't start, make sure you take a jump pack with you and a small selection of tools so that you can check some other things that I'll get to in a minute. But turn the bike on, turn the key switch on. If there's no power, put a jump box on the battery. Find the battery, put a jump box. If there's no battery, use the jump box as the battery. Make sure that your indicator lights are working. At this point, you can then go ahead and put your turn signals on to make sure that they're working front and back, because bulbs are cheap, but there's other components like the wiring and so on that could run you a good bit of money. Next, you want to check and see if your headlight's working. So come over, flip a switch, make sure your headlight's working on both high beam and low beam. If it's working both on high beam and low beam, you're in good shape. If the engine runs and you have verified that it runs, you then want to come down and lightly touch each one of the mufflers, however many there are, the header pipes, and make sure that you're firing on all cylinders. It may sound great, but you'll touch this one hot, this one cold, and that one hot and that one hot. Well, it might be a fouled plug. So what do you do in that case? You grab your handy dandy little tool, the tool pack that you take with you, and you pull a spark plug and you check the condition of that spark plug. Is it black and wet? If it's black and wet, smell it. If it doesn't smell like gasoline, that could be a big problem. If it smells like gasoline, that is a carburetor adjustment issue. That means that with this particular bike, you have 4 carburetors. Those carburetors need cleaned, gone through, and synchronized. If you don't synchronize those carburetors, your bike's not going to run very well at all. If the bike does run, you want to start it and listen to it and listen for valve clatter. You want to listen for chain slap noise. You want to listen for misfires, little misses. You want to check over the entire engine, make sure that you don't have any obvious heavy leaks. Pay attention. If the bike is perfectly clean, there is not a spot of dust on it anywhere, not a spot of oil anywhere, suspect that the person has cleaned and detailed the bike to hide possible flaws. All right? What do you do in that case? You say, I'd like to take it for a test drive. let me hand you a couple $100 and let me take it on a test drive just up and down the road a few times so that I can warm the engine up and see if any leaks present themselves. Some things that you can do also is check all of your case screws and bolts and nuts and everything, and look for evidence that they have been butchered, that they have not been cared for, that everything looks copacetic. Okay, this is your timing cover. These screws are typically in really rough shape. It takes a special screwdriver to work on these. If everything looks good, you start it, the engine runs good, you run it for a little while, you look underneath it, there's no evidence of oil on the ground or no evidence of oil under the crankcase, chances are it's pretty well sealed up. But before you go on that ride, make sure you check the oil and look at the condition of the oil. Something else you want to do is, when you contact the owner, ask them to please not start the motorcycle. You want to hear it cold start. You want to know how this thing starts. If it's been sitting for a day or sitting for a week, you want to know how it runs. Other things that'll point out evidence of carburetor issues like float bowl leaks or gasket leaks is the yellowing that you see on this particular engine. This bike has earned these marks, so I've not cleaned them off, but if you've got yellowing here and then you have 4 drain hoses that come down, and I parked this bike strategically, you see this dark spot here, that's actually just asphalt tar. But look under the bike and see if it looks wet, if there's any drips. Turn the fuel on as soon as you get there so that you can let the fuel drain through and see if any of the floats are stuck. There's so many things that you need to check, especially if you want a bike that you can just buy, plate, insure, title, and hop on and go, and fix little things along the way. Okay? You want to check all of the wiring. You can flip the seat up, look at the wiring under there. You can flip your side covers off, check the wiring there. You're looking for any wiring that looks like it has been messed with. I wouldn't recommend popping the headlight bucket out. Essentially, when you are going through all of your switches and everything and making sure that everything works here, most of that's in the headlight bucket, so you're going to know right off the bat. Still got the key on. Let's just make sure this little boy's going to start. Alright, we're good. Left the key on, and it's a points ignition. I didn't want to fry the points. You have 2 sets of points in this particular one. Alright. Other things you want to check is the exhaust system. Do you notice any discoloration on the pipes? If you notice discoloration on one pipe versus the other, that's an indication that you have a carburetor that is out of adjustment. It is running too lean, and that particular cylinder is running hot. At that point, compression test, because that particular cylinder could be burned. Very important. These are all little things that, just with a little bit of common sense, you can check yourself and make sure that the bike is going to be in good shape. Now let's go to suspension and wheels. You want to look for evidence of oil coming down from the fork seals. You want to apply the front brake and sit on the bike and rock the suspension and listen for gurgling. If you hear gurgling, chances are your fork oil is low and it is leaking somewhere. It can be leaking simply just from the gasket down here. It could be leaking from a seal and they have cleaned it up so you don't see it. Also, you want to check your tires. There will be a mark on your tires that will give you a date code. Standard rule of thumb, If you've got a tire that's over 8 years old, regardless of how good the tread is, it has to be replaced. It's your safety on two wheels. You get a flat tire on an automobile that has four wheels, you're not going to run off the road. You get a flat tire on a motorcycle or a blowout, sidewall blowout on a motorcycle, that can throw you hell west bent and crooked. Now we'll come down here. You want to take a look at the condition of the spokes. Just quickly go through and pinch the spokes. You're looking for any loose spokes. No loose spokes? Great. Ask the owner if they wouldn't mind putting it on the center stand. Have them sit on the back so the front tire comes up off the ground. You want to spin it and check for run out, or you want to check for a dip in the rim. A dip in the rim will indicate that the bike has been in an accident, albeit a minor enough accident. It was enough to bend the rim. Then you're in for replacing a rim. That's not a cheap endeavor. Another thing you want to do is check your wheel bearings. When you spin it, you want to listen. You also want to try to wiggle the wheel side to side. No wiggle side to side? Great. That takes care of that front end part. Next thing you want to do is check your headstock bearings. You're listening for any kind of crunchy sound or sandy sound. And you also want to, again, get on it, roll it forward and grab the brake. When you grab the brake, see if you feel a little bit of play with the headstock moving a little bit. Could just need tightened, but it could be a much deeper problem where you need to replace the bearings and the cups, and that's not real fun to do, especially if you're not super mechanically inclined. Now let's move on to the condition of the tank. You want to be sure that the inside of that tank is good and clean. So you pop it open, you look, oh, I see a little bit of rust in there. So I want to take a flashlight and I want to look at the whole thing. I want to make sure that this thing isn't just trashed with rust, even though looking at the outside of it, the tank looks great. It might only be a year or two before you get pinholes in the bottom and that tank starts leaking. Okay, we've talked about the exhaust, looking for bluing on the exhaust. You also want to check for any smoke residue, any carbon residue coming out from your clamps. If you have that, you've got crush gaskets that need to be replaced. Sorry about that. Now on the back wheel, there is an indicator on the back wheel on most of these bikes that when you step on the brake, that brake will move a certain distance, and there is a mark on that brake that will show you, just with a quick visual, how much brake life you've got left. If that little indicator has gone beyond where it says replace, or you've got a little line on your hub, then you've got back brakes involved in it. Okay, had a little interruption. The other thing that you want to check, like I say, is the exhaust. You start off at the headers and then you come back. If the bike happens to have the original exhaust like this, you need to look under the exhaust, up underneath, and you're looking for rust, evidence of rust. If you find rust on it, that's going to be another expense. You're going to have to buy at least new mufflers. This original set of exhaust in the condition that it's in is valued at $2,000. You can see right here, Honda Motor Corporation CB350F HM333. These are all four original exhausts. So if you wanted to go back original and you're wanting a cream puff, it's gonna cost you if you have to replace the exhaust. All right, swing arm. You want to check and make sure that you don't have a lot of lateral side to side play, and you also want to check that it looks like it's been maintained. This particular bike has one grease zerk over here on this side. It takes a little bit of grease. Just look for any grease on there. Like I say, if it's super clean, you've got an issue with the previous owner cleaning it up real well. And to keep you from taking a gamble, rock the bike back and forth. Now let's come over here and talk about the back wheel. Mainly the sprocket condition and the chain condition. It's kind of hard to see the sprocket in here, but I can guarantee you, if this sprocket right here looks like shark's teeth, that the front one's going to look like shark's teeth too. That's more money out of your pocket. It's a repair that would need to be done. Now we're going to come to the back shocks. These are rebuildable. You can put new seals in them, refill them with oil. What you need to do with these is check and see if you have evidence of leaks. I happen to have evidence of leaks, and you can see right here how it's dirty back here. That's not just grease dirt, because I'll come over to the other one. I say grease dirt from the chain. I'll come over to the other one and you can see I've got evidence here too. Not as much, but some. All right. Also, you want to take the tire and rock it back and forth and make sure that you don't have any play. Again, check your spokes. Make sure that your spokes, you don't have loose spokes in different spots. And then give it a good spin and make sure that it's running true. And again, that the tire is seated correctly. Something else that not a lot of people know is that motorcycle tires all have a dot on them. That dot is the light point on the tire. The reason that dot is there is so that the person putting the tire on knows to install the tire with the valve stem and the dot in line. That's the purpose of that. Okay? And we look right here, this is where you'll find your date. To learn how to date tires, it's as simple as getting online, typing in how do I date tires into your preferred browser. What else do we have to talk about and look at? Leaks, swing arm, gasket sealer. If you happen to see any gasket sealer on the engine, Honda Bond is gray. If you see Honda Bond on here, gray, and you don't see that the screws have been butchered, chances are the engine was serviced correctly and you don't have to worry about it. Your carburetor boots, you want to make sure they're not dry checked or dry cracked and that you don't have any issues with those. If you can get to the airbox, get to the airbox and check it out and take a look at it. All right, on this particular motorcycle, I believe I have to take the air cleaner out, or excuse me, the storage cubby out. But let's go ahead and lift this up and take a look. Yeah, this will just lift up out of there. There's your airbox. Go ahead and pop your cover off and take a look at your air filter. Make sure that the air filter looks clean from the top. All right. Another thing that's really, really good and nice to see is right there that your toolkit is present. Sometimes you'll get lucky and your owner's manual will be present too. But you're looking again for your wiring to be unmolested, not all screwed up. And the fact that there is an air cleaner in there, that's important too. Condition of the seat, that's kind of irrelevant. Seats are a dime a dozen. Seat covers are a dime a dozen. So I wouldn't worry too much about the seat. Bikes this age, you're going to have some issues with that. Let me check my list here, make sure I got everything. We covered the brakes, we covered the wiring, the lights, the switches, the tires, the wheel condition, bearings, wheel run out and spoke rest, headstock, fork seals, chain and sprockets, rear shocks, fastener condition, that would be the screws being wore out, throttle, I did forget something, the throttle, the clutch, the starter, and the gearbox. Put a jump pack on your battery. Make sure, like I showed you, that the bike will at least turn over. Okay, you don't necessarily have to start it if you're good with your hands and the bike's been sitting for a very long time. You just want to bump the button if it's been sitting for a long time. Not a long time, just bump. Okay, then you're good. All right, the fastener condition we covered. The throttle, take the throttle and just turn it with your fingers and let go. See how that snaps back? You want to make sure that your throttle cables and or your carburetors are not all gummed up and that have your throttle all screwed up. Your clutch, with the bike not running, grab your clutch, push the bike in gear with it on the center stand, and ask the current owner to spin that back wheel, or take it off the center stand, put it in gear, hold that clutch, and try to move forward or backward. If the bike doesn't move, your clutch is stuck. That's another problem that you'll have to pay attention to. So that takes care of your clutch, and then you want to run through the gears on your gearbox if your clutch is okay. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to go through all 5 gears or 4 gears or whatever you have. Inspect your frame for any rust or any obvious damage or repairs. And I already mentioned, check your oil, check your exhaust, check your spark plugs, check your gauges, check for leaks, check your swing arm, check for gasket, sealer, and then lastly, make sure that all of your keys or all of your locks match the key. If they don't, your ignition switch may have been changed out. All of these locks have a number on them. All of them. The seat lock, the ignition lock, the steering lock, they all have numbers on them. You can order new old stock keys for a song and a dance. That is all that Zippo has for what to look for when you're buying either a vintage or a late model bike. Look at everything. Be vigilant. It's a purchase and it's an investment. So make sure that you do your due diligence and check your bike over thoroughly. I promise you guys, I will see you on the next one. If you like this video, please consider hitting the subscribe button. And for more videos, you can hit the bell icon. And then down below, there's a couple of random videos. We'll see y'all later.